February 23rd. We'll call the meeting of the Tilton Northfield Fire and EMS Fire Station Building Committee to order. Present are Commissioner John Selly, myself, Kevin Cate, Kevin Waldron, Tim Statler, Matt Ozier, and Chief Seatar. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes from our meeting last month?
She does a good job with the minutes.
She does? Try to
That's the
remember
one that does these, right? Yes.
Yeah, I try to remember to send her a thank you, and thankfully today I did remember. It's appreciated. So Beth, thank you very much for doing the minutes for us. We have a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I'll move to accept the minutes of the meeting of February 9th, 2022.
So we have a motion by Kevin Waldron, second by Commissioner Silly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Minutes as written are accepted. Before we get started on really our main focus for tonight, just a point of information. Lisa Martin, who was part of the 2019 building committee, emailed me, I think it was last week, and said that she would be interested in joining this committee. She is a snowbird, using her words. So she's in Florida, I guess, this time of year, and she'll be back and available to sit on the committee from April through December. She said that she was going to email her interest to the commissioners. And
We did receive an email. It wasn't discussed as part of last night's agenda, but we have a meeting next Tuesday that weekend. The commissioners can say and address it.
terrific. I think Lisa would be a great addition to the committee, given
Another one too.
her professional background as an engineer will certainly be very welcomed, and her opinions and her participation were terrific in the 2019 committee. So, does anybody have anything else they want to discuss before we get into the project proposals from the different contractors? Okay. Start.
Did you guys review the information on the building design conference that I had sent to everybody?
I did not, to be honest.
I did.
You told me about it, but
What was the dates of that?
It was in May.
Yeah, that's what I'm
They
thinking.
sent a follow-up email to me today. Look it up.
Did the commissioners discuss that at all?
No, other than I said that I made you aware of it, and that I thought that you would look at it before this meeting and decide whether you wanted to, whether anybody wanted to participate in it. It is, I didn't bring my glasses with me, so bear with me.
Can't lend you mine, I don't have it.
It is in May 24th through the 26th. I looked at the agenda today, and if you, at the 24th, I believe is a Tuesday.
Yep.
Fly in the night before, attend the first 2 days. The 26th, I looked at the agenda on the 26th. It's tomorrow. You can fly out on Thursday. Unless you want to stay Thursday.
I can't attend. That's one of the busiest times for us at work.
you remember when you sent it for the first time, Chief? Do you have a date?
Should have been the 10th of February.
It was the 10th or the 11th I sent it out.
It
You
was the
sent
day
it to me
after
a
our
long time
last
ago,
one.
but
I
okay.
sent it to the building.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just showing here some of the stuff that have something there.
Well,
One
that's what I'm
section
wearing.
there is Construction 101, and it talks about that stuff, which would probably be good to see. Then they have another session on evaluating qualifications and proposals for the best design team selection for your project. If you read the 2 days that they have in the main part of the seminar, there were multiple sessions that I thought would benefit members of this committee in educating themselves as to really what are the right questions to ask, what are the right things to look for folks that do this for a living. You know, these folks, that's what they do, but they teach other people how to do it, you know, building committees and things like that. I think if we want to educate ourselves into trying to provide the best product for the fire district, I think it would be a good thing for some of the members to attend these things.
I would tend to agree. Well, the dates were screwy and I haven't straightened it out yet, but I think there's a conflict with the first day. But anyway, beyond that, these people, that's what they do. But I'm wondering, we've kind of been down that road before with the people that usually do it, and that's how we ended up with the big money project that we keep getting slapped with. So I'm wondering if
This is for your education, not anybody else's.
Right.
You can decide what would be best. It'd be better have better information on how to pick who you want to do these things.
Yeah, I mean, I would, given the lack of a conflict, which I can't say right now, not because it's private, it just hadn't come together yet. I, for one, would love to go. Absent that conflict, and that conflict may go away. But I don't know what, is there a deadline for,
There probably is, but it's
it's far enough away that, and personally, I would love to. I just, I'm an information magnet, in no such sense.
yeah.
But yeah, it's,
I can forward you what's happened today. And if you fool around with it, you can get through all the, like,
The different seminars are referring to.
yeah. And I read them both. I read it all today. Extremely helpful.
John, I know you
I would
can't,
think it would be extremely helpful for some of you folks who attend.
I know you can't speak for the commission, but do you have a feeling whether, how either of the commissioners might feel about it?
So, Chief and I had talked about this before we even saw the flyers. There's pros and cons to it. Obviously, it's cost is one of the cons, obviously, the number of people you send, but having a representative going and bringing back the information is a pro to it. It's something that can be addressed with the commissioners. I can't find the equal.
I just sent you.
Now I just got it now.
There it is.
Yeah, unfortunately with our emails through the district, everything gets put into threads. So even though you sent it on the 10th, I have nothing for the 10th because it overlaps, and I think that would be part of it is the cost.
I think having that, trying to make a better educated decision probably end up saving you money in the long run.
What is the cost? I don't think I know.
For attendee is $425.
Plus your flight.
Flight and hotel.
Plus flight and hotel. So you're talking probably to Chicago and all that, you're probably looking at $1,500, probably.
Do you know anyone with a helicopter?
I actually do.
There's been a lot of them flying around.
But the hotels and stuff out there is gonna probably be where they
The
probably.
hotel's like
probably about
$199 a
$250.
night,
Okay, that's not bad then.
and then the flight is into,
It's Chicago O'Hare probably.
it's either O'Hare or Midway, I can't remember which. I
Either
think
way,
O'Hare.
Chicago has two of them,
Yeah.
and you literally come right into that. That's
I think Now, I've been to Chicago a couple of times, I can't remember which,
Midway.
I've flown into both of them, I
Yeah.
think, and I can't remember which one it's on.
So, I mean, it's probably about 1,500 per person. It is good information it's something that can be brought up to the commissioners next week. We can add that to the agenda too, if that's what this committee is interested in doing. The dates are May 24th to the 26th. I assume those are 3 days of it. So it'd be fly in on the 23rd and fly out the night of the 26th is what you could probably get away with.
Yeah, definitely.
If the committee wants to, then I can definitely bring that to the commissioners. I see pros and cons to it. So
From your perspective, would
I think there's benefit from it, absolutely.
would you go?
I don't know. I mean, I don't like using taxpayers' money for that. That's a personal thing for me because, we said May. I would be available for it, but I just really have heartburn myself about using taxpayer money for my stuff. And I'm not gonna front $1,500 on behalf of the district because I love it so much.
I wouldn't look at it as spending the tax, I would look at it as an investment more than that.
And I do. That's why I say I see the pros and cons of it. My frugal side, I definitely, but I don't see.
That's where you should do it, the frugal side, because it talks about, there's sessions in there on how to.
Saving money and.
A lot about saving money, how to make your buildings more energy efficient.
Energy cost
There's even one
efficient.
in there about saying how it could be zero net cost. I don't know how we could do that in the Northeast, but.
You can't, that's more down south where you're using solar panels and LED lighting and all that.
Well, we would probably be using LED lighting anyways, but why couldn't we use solar panels? You know?
You can, but,
Put them on the tower.
yeah, I mean, if this committee is recommending 1 or 2 people, I can take that to the commissioners.
I have a concern that if we, and I haven't heard this suggested, but perhaps maybe just from my perspective inferred, that if we put off making a selection of who we're going to ask to participate in this as far as contractors go, to, that would be June, by the time somebody get back. Now we're 4 months farther along in the process. That doesn't give us, that takes 4 months away from our abilities to fine tune this thing before and bring it to the public through the course of this year, prior to the annual meeting in 2023.
I think that you might be able to do a parallel path on this though, because this is more getting into the design and stuff. Yes, it talks about funding a little bit, but where you're looking at the contractors and stuff, contractor A, as long as they're very similar to contractor B and contractor C, I'm willing to bet that whoever goes to this and comes back, this is the only part you're looking for. So if we're going to the questions and all that, and then you're involved in that, and you could possibly have that person out there involved by Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the hell it is.
But my point is that
Okay.
it's February, and
Yeah.
our goal was to decide tonight, or at the very latest, our next meeting, 2 weeks, who we wanted to interview.
Yes.
And then start coming up with those interview questions. So that would be March. Do we delay that until May when somebody's out there for conference? The other side of it is, I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn. The concern along John's line with spending taxpayer dollars is, you know, you send me, I may never ever sit on another building committee ever again, or Tim, or Kevin. But if we send somebody from the fire district, and I think you said that you've already been to these types of conferences, but if we send, you know, one of the, let's say we send Derek or we send Matt, who are they're gonna be part of the fire district for
Down the road.
you know, for a period of time beyond when this, when this
Right over
committee
to the
ends.
side.
I don't wanna,
Yeah, they both come from here, so that.
I don't wanna be buying a microphone.
Janice is down in Florida, she doesn't come back, you know, I could be moving to Florida next week.
So here's why I think why it piqued my interest was because one of the things talks in the handout, or it's not a handout, the information we have from them, talks about different processes and contractors. So here I am tonight, I've looked through all of these things, and not a single one of them goes, here I am, I'm your guy. Because any one of these people could build a building. So, if we,
They have experience with fire departments, but from what the ones I've done through already, they all have some experience with it, so.
and it's not, well, let me sidestep for a second. Does any one of these jump out? Did any one of these come to the top for anybody?
No, I had the same reaction you
They're
did.
very
Similar.
Yeah,
They're
one,
so-
similar in content, they don't really,
right.
they show a lot of pictures, this is what we did, this is what we did. But
I was
Now-
surprised, one of them that hasn't built any fire stations, so they don't list any fire stations.
This one.
Yeah.
But the other thing is-
Snowstone? Yeah.
in this conference, there's a whole session on what is required in today's fire stations, not fire stations built 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because over the last few years, what we've learned about the environment and what we are exposed to and stuff like that has changed what is required in a fire station.
Well, and I think a good example of that is what Alan Clark was talking about with the negative pressure rooms. So when the firefighters come back from an incident, big one in that room, decontaminated in there, and there's those contaminants or potential contaminants don't get out into the rest of the
Yeah, you
station.
keep it confined to that heat.
And I'm sure that was never thought of 10 years ago.
Not as much,
To answer your question, Kevin, it does for me because of my role in the business, so 100 BPS stick out
From personal experience.
for me. Right.
See, I have no, I mean, I know who these people have EPS. I know these people. And I've seen their work. And they're all fine.
There.
So, and again, I saw one of these, and I can't tell you which one it is, that has, I can't remember the guy's name now.
Oh, Kyle Barber. BPS.
It was BPS? Okay, so that's the only name I recognized anywhere, and it's the only name I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think so.
Well,
but you.
Hunter's using Warren Street,
Which
who
is,
Kyle Barker used to work for. There was a question that came up, and obviously we have to ask that question, does Kyle Barker even have a stand?
Sam?
If he got it, if he's an engineer.
Oh, yeah, he's an architect, yeah, he's certified architect.
Right, he's gotta be, okay.
He's building schools right now,
Oh, is he?
yeah.
Do you know him on any personal level at all?
Not at a personal level, I only know him from working on previous projects.
But I remember him, I felt he was a little hesitant to, when we were on the board and talking about just raw space, and what goes here, what
Very
was.
listening.
He seemed a bit like trying to guide us away from that, and like,
So
Make it any
when we
sense?
first hired him back in 2015 or something like that, we did a space needs thing, and he had all these bubbles on a big thing of what this areas did and how big they were. And once the committee decided on this, what the fire station was going to contain, and then when we decided that this was the land we were going to use, and he's put it all together into floor plans and conceptual design, which this committee does have those things. And again, when we went for by 3M, we did the same thing. The space needs really didn't change much, other than decontamination space actually expanded. But other than that, it was basically this, but the building was an entirely different building than what was over on the Tilton School property. So, you know, because the land was different, we were able to do different things. Tilton School had to be a two-story building. Manville Road was a one-story building.
Because, as you know, I wasn't here last meeting. I stayed away from it for 9 days, and I had a lot of time to do nothing think. It occurred to me, one of the many things that occurred to me that time, is if a fire station, no matter how big it is, but no matter where it is, if a fire station absolutely, positively has to have X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and we can't somehow logically circumvent any of that, but we're gonna end up with a multi-million-dollar project no matter what that's gonna get turned in.
So was that a question or a statement?
That's a question. Are we gonna end up, because if, for example, if we have to have whatever it is you absolutely have to have, by whatever requirement, real or imagined, and all those real or imagined requirements have a price tag, is that gonna put us out of business regardless?
Well, that's a great, well-worded question.
You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Right, we're gonna talk about, as the chief said, you know, how you make all those rooms fit in the location. You know, where you're gonna put the parking and how that dictates where the front door is gonna be. How you're gonna utilize, you know, traffic flow out of the old building, traffic flow out of the new building. How wide the doors are and how long the bays are, we might have some control over, but right, you're gonna have a decontamination area, and
Yeah,
it's
if you
gonna
have to have
include these
that,
features, and
you
it's
have
gonna
to have
need
it,
this
and it
much
costs
space.
$200,000, no matter what building it's in. Okay, that's $200,000 you can't play with.
Right.
Guaranteed spent money. If you have to have this, that's X amount, guaranteed spent money. Well, if all this guaranteed spent money adds up to the millions that we're not gonna get approved for, we're pissing in the wind.
I think whatever the cost
That's not
ends up,
okay, isn't it?
yes,
It is.
but it won't be in the minutes probably.
No, Beth will edit that out.
I mean, am I making any sense? You see
No,
what-
I understand that there's a price tag that's gonna be prohibited by the general voters. What the variable in that is the education component that we provide along with why the price tag is this and why it's not this. That's the key that needs to happen. We have to educate why it is this. We're just, not because we want it, it's because this is what is required to provide a safe and efficient working environment for this department to operate.
Right, you don't talk about how much it's gonna cost to heat the building, you just know New Hampshire will heat the building.
Right.
And this is how we're going to heat it the most efficiently that it can be. We're going to use this type of insulation or whatever.
Right, part of the process that we're looking to go through is, okay, Mr. Contractor, what is the least expensive, most efficient way for us to heat this building? Is it with geothermal? Is it with, you know, solar panels on the roof with water in them that circulate through and provide radiant flow heating? Natural gases, who knows? There are things that are required by code that we know about. I can think of two right off the top of my head. Of course, one we just left. But, well, it's got to be ADA compliant. So, you know, entry doors have to be a certain width, and it has to be handicap parking, and, you know,
That was actually one that
accessibility.
I wouldn't mind finding somewhere in.
The other one is
It's gonna
that,
be ADA, but no one is going in there.
Well, the public areas have to be
Right.
ADA. The private areas have to be convertible to ADA. They have to have the ability to be ADA, although they don't have to be currently ADA. So when you put in a bathroom, in and of itself, if it's in the private area, not the public area, doesn't have to be ADA compliant, but it must have the backers in the walls so that if you need to make it ADA compliant, all you need to do is throw in the bars.
So
But it has to have the right dimensions.
give me an example of something that you refer to as private area.
The crew quarters, which can be done purely by policy. Nobody's allowed, the public, general public is not allowed. ESPN is on your phone.
I don't know why it's doing that, because
The Bruin signed it in gold.
it's a smartphone, it's smarter than me.
Tuke is coming back.
And so the things that you do have.
So like in the kitchen, an ADA compliant sink is actually lower than a normal sink. If you put the support structure in the main structure, so that if in the future you had to add an ADA compliant sink, you could tear out the sink and it would be lower, and the structure would be there for ADA compliance. But in the meantime, you build it.
What would cause, what's the trigger to have to make that? Because
It's
So,
talking about, I imagine, the crew, you call them,
well,
you don't have,
yes, you can.
yeah.
You could have administration staff who are wheelchair bound, which would then have to have access to the kitchen, the break area and all that. That alone is what he's talking about in that situation.
ADA is so widespread. I was, the I-Chiefs, International Chiefs, we have a chat thing that I can look at every day and what are the problems. And one of the problems today was an ADA compliance. Now, that really has nothing to do with what we think of ADA. But one of the firefighters in a town in Connecticut, they have a service dog. And this chief is looking for other fire chiefs. Do you have anybody that has to have a service dog? And they're in it with legal now because this person has post-traumatic stress and they require a service dog, and you have to make accommodations if they're reasonable.
does dog go on the engine?
I don't know. I didn't get into that part. They would, but this chief was looking for it. Another one
Is it a
was
Dalmatian?
a medical condition where they wandered off the dog onto a medical condition where a firefighter was diabetic and is insulin dependent. Do they have to make accommodations for that? In the end, yes, you do. And so ADA is really something that you have to pay attention to and be careful of. That's all I'm saying.
No,
So I think the things that you have control over is, how many bays do you foresee you need?
But that's,
Because that's square footage. And then the site location, is this site gonna be less expensive to bring utilities in than that site? Does this site require less excavation than that site? But yeah, going back to, it's this many square feet, it's got a roof, roofs cost X amount per square
Your fund
feet.
configuration is one of those areas where you have control over. Do you have bay? Do you have partial bay? Do you have individual rooms? The number of bathrooms, do you do gender specific, or do you just do two individuals? And that way it doesn't matter if you have, because eventually you could have females on the department too, so now you gotta make sure you have accommodation for them equivalently, otherwise all these things lead to it. I mean, so there is so much in the public area, you really have to meet them all.
I get the public, but why anything needs
But,
to
I mean,
be?
the other one that I thought was because it's a municipal building, it has to be sprinkled.
Correct, yes.
Sprinkled.
Only at a certain size.
No, fire stations,
Have to be sprinkled.
essential facilities have to be sprinkled. Period.
I'm willing to bet there's a code requirement that yes.
See, I think that's totally
I know you
massive.
do, but to get your certificate of occupancy and things like that, you have to meet certain codes and stuff, whether you agree with them or not. And I know you don't.
All that shit just makes it more expensive.
It does.
And that's one more person that's gonna say, no.
I know.
And we need as few of those that we can,
Somebody's gonna say no if
somebody's gonna say.
If Warren
they're-
Buffett showed up in town and said, I'm gonna build you a fire station and it's not gonna cost you anything,
Somebody's gonna say, no,
somebody's gonna say no.
somebody's gonna say, no, because we gotta maintain it.
Right.
Right.
That's another factor that you have to do, is you wanna
gotta
make
be
sure that when you build this thing, that you don't have to,
Your cost
it's
center.
your maintenance cost, you wanna try and keep as minimum as possible. By choosing what materials you use to, you know, keep the thing working the way it's supposed to work.
So you like, or
There's a whole session in that, on this thing on choosing materials for reduced maintenance. There's a whole session on there for, you know, efficiency, building efficiency for maintenance and long-term costs, energy costs.
Well, who, if this thing comes to fruition and the commissioners are on the front of the line, who can go? Can you go? Can you go?
I can't go. I've got 2 weeks of things prior to that.
You got what?
2 weeks of other commitments, the 2 weeks prior to that.
So what's another week?
I don't have that much, I can't work, yeah, but.
You don't have that much
Can't be away,
vacation
can't be
time.
away from the office that long, that much, in a row.
I can't.
Well, I like your suggestion, should it be these guys? I mean, I think the other thing we haven't talked about is the credibility you bring to the meeting. We sent people to this conference to help us understand and learn about how to do the best job.
The more that we can convey to the public that we've done our due diligence on putting this proposal together, then the better chance of success we have. And I don't think it's all going to be about the almighty dollar. I think there's a lot of other factors that are
Yeah,
going to play.
you got my attention.
We've talked about it before, you know, there's a certain amount of attachment to Park Street, whereas I don't think there really is to Center Street, but Park Street, people have some,
Well, people remember when they built it.
yeah.
Yeah, because it was built in our lifetime.
Right.
Even you.
And you'd be surprised, there's a lot of people in Tilton and Northfield that don't even know that Center Street exists. They don't know that that's our headquarters for a fire.
It is noteworthy of how many people don't know the fire district thing at all.
Yeah, unless you need a fire permit, you don't worry about it unless you have an event.
There's a lot of people in town, a lot. They think we're only a call department, nobody's ever at Park Street.
And they don't know the
That's why
concept, the operations.
Right.
It's not like you go anywhere else and it says Laconia Fire Department. It's city, they know that it's part of their town. They don't seem to have that. I don't know if it's disconnect the right word, I don't know. But they just don't know.
There's a lot of people that don't understand that Park Street is just a garage. That it's not staffed. They get confused when they go there. Why are the doors not open? There's nobody here. Because they're in Center Street. So I think,
So talk about what you think the money means, because you got my attention. Because I can tell you that I think most of the no in the past is, what have you done? Millions, 5, 6, 7 million, out of your mind? That they get plugged, they get focused, they get hooked on that. And, you know, I'm not a $7 million guy.
nor am I.
And I think the nut you gotta crack is that price tag.
But again, and I think we can take lessons from what the police station building committee in Tilton did. That the multitude of public information
Yes.
sessions that they had. And they had their own Facebook page. keeping people abreast of what was going on through that whole process. And when it finally got to the end and they came up with, and they had that number of $4.5 million, it wasn't a shock to anybody. And everybody understood where those costs were coming from and why they made the decisions that they did. They went with a masonry building. Well, why? Because they don't want to have criminals driving trucks through a stick frame building. But do you have the same concern with a fire station? Probably not. And I think if we are effective in communicating through this process, then the dollar sign is going to be less of a decision making.
It's all about educating the public who are going to be voting on this, why the proposal is what it is.
Yeah, you can't just drop it on annual meeting day and say, okay.
Yeah, we've talked about
When we have been in public
bringing the people in instead of coming. Did anyone here go to those meetings where they had, I didn't go to a single one because it was like,
I did.
what kind of turnout did they get?
It'd be anywhere from 10 to 50 people.
Really? We got 50 people to show?
One of the last ones, there were, yeah,
Well, that's one.
you know, it was
But
a
if you get
couple
better
of months
than
before the town meeting. They did a great presentation in the room upstairs in the Tilton Town Hall. There were a lot of people there.
You just gotta hit everything, and that's what you see the schools doing right now, getting to the Rotary, getting to this, getting the information out there so that people can ask the questions and you can address the questions and things like that. Because just people who still don't understand what those projects are, and it's like,
And since John brought up the school, you know, we have to do our due diligence because there's going to be a lot of questions about the projects that the school board is recommending that could have been done in the past couple of years with state building aid money that the school board messed up their applications for, or just didn't apply for the applications. Scuttled the project because very big missed opportunities. Now they want the taxpayers of the district to pay for it. And the fact that there's legislation that's probably going to pass that says it's being amended because it said that all cooperative school districts will be dissolved. Now it's being amended to say that they can be dissolved and make the process much simpler than what it is currently. So any one of the three towns could say, yeah, we're out. See ya. And if that passes, regardless of whether Tilton or Northfield or Sanderson says we don't want to be in the district anymore, if that legislation passes, there will be no bonding allowed. So we have to avoid those kind of obstacles that were foreseeable. That
So, there'll be, if the legislation, as you say, where they can split up, there won't be any bonding for, you couldn't get a loan on a school addition or a new school? Because we looked at this in Lakes Region Fire. The way it works, but we're a municipal corporation, it may be different. But the way it was, like say, you have this group, you vote to buy something or build something, and everyone in there has to pay their share. And if they leave, they still have to pay their share because they were part of that vote when it took place. Now, that wouldn't be the same for a school district?
I think that's part of the issue, is why they'll say that there won't be any bonding, because because it's just that, I'm not sure, but that sounds like, how can, if Tilton says, okay, we're out of here, or probably a bad example, let's say Northfield says, we're out of the school district. But 6 months prior, they voted to approve the bond for school projects.
Still on the hook for it.
Are they still on the hook for it, or are they no longer on the hook for it, and that now means that Tilton and Samberton have to pick up what Northfield was paying?
My understanding is that they'd still be on the hook for it.
So,
So you wouldn't leave. Why would you leave if you're still on the hook for it?
right. Here's another example, and I'm not picking on the school.
Well, before you do, I just want to speak up. The relevance of what the soapbox was just brought up, I can understand that there is a cost coming to the districts from other things, so we understand that. The relevance of going into all these other tangents, I don't think are relevant here. Because yes, there are policies out there, but there are policies for other things. That was a chance for you to get on your soapbox from a great hill.
No.
So I really would ask that you stay back on topic of, yes, there is funding coming that could impact us from the school, and leave it at that, rather than the Great Hill propaganda.
It was not a soapbox, and Mr. Hill was not in my mind frame, but the, I lost my train of thought. I will come back.
Well, while you're thinking of it, can I ask a question? Is there any, with the infrastructure package that was passed, is there any money available for any municipal project like this?
Not for fire stations. I asked both senators to research it for me. And, they
Still
got back.
limited.
There's no grants or anything out there for?
There is a grant program, a food and drug thing, that could help. I've looked into it. It's a possibility for a small percentage of
Mhm.
what the project would cost.
And Globe
But
and
the,
things like that?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. And Globe and other agencies like that for like ventilation systems to maintain the life of their equipment better? And
I haven't seen anything like that in Globe or any of the other peer manufacturers. The likelihood of getting one of those grants, I guess, depends on how good your application is. I've never done one of those applications, so if we were to move forward with that, I think we should hire somebody to help us out with that, because I've never done that before. The likelihood of being good at it, if you've never done it, would be low, I would say.
And I think that's, that's
Better to be
important,
lucky than good, right?
that, because that's a good example, because somebody could ask that question.
Yep.
Hey, Senator Shaheen and Senator Hassan have been promoting this bipartisan infrastructure program. Aren't there monies for fire stations? And the chief can stand up and say, no, I contacted both of them, their offices, and unfortunately there isn't.
Well, that's part of meeting prep, is understanding all the questions you might get asked,
Right.
trying to answer them in the presentation so that they don't have to.
Yeah, they don't get asked.
that's part of public information ahead of time, because then you get those questions as you do those things, and then you get the answers to those questions so that
There is for water districts, so
Oh, yes.
maybe you guys,
So-
you guys let your friends.
That was my next
know
thing,
that-
water, improving water districts, or sewer districts, there's money in there for that, roads, bridges, that type of stuff.
Would those, the infrastructure dollars, could those be used for developing cisterns or dry hydrants?
No. I looked into that. You know why? Because they're not, they're more aimed at municipal water supplies
Oh,
for
okay.
potable
Water.
water. The water we use, I don't care if it's potable or not.
Can't we just go see UPS and say, hey, we need some, if you're coming here?
So impact fees is one of the other things that I looked at. I had our lawyer look at it, and evidently the district can institute impact fees for new developments. And he thinks it's only a vote of the commissioners that needs to happen for that to take place. He's researching it a little bit more. And I'll have, he's got his plate full right now with the water district stuff.
So that would be over and above, like, requiring them to have sprinklers and all
Yes,
that?
this big, you could charge them a fee of some sort, or a gift in kind of some sort, because their development is gonna impact your service.
Can a district do that, or is it the municipality?
So I asked specifically a special village district, and it says apparently it is yes.
So I've floated the idea of impact fees. It was looked into, unbeknownst to me before I brought it up, the accounting and management side of impact fees. There's a certain amount of work required, and it was not felt that it was worthwhile from the town's perspective to go the impact fee route.
Is it a one-time thing, or is it an ongoing?
No, the impact is
It's generally a
an
one-time.
initial one. If you're gonna build that, you're going to have to do X. And you may, if the district was to pursue that, you may get some pushback from the towns.
Well, yeah, and there's pros and cons to it, you know.
But I personally, I absent what I didn't know, and there again, I'm an information magnet, until I learned what was involved with the accounting side and maintenance side, if you will, I was all for it. You're coming here, you're gonna do that. You're making us do things that we wouldn't do if you weren't coming. You come, we need more police, we need more fire, we need this, we need that. Without you, we don't need that, so that should be on them, the way I think.
Theoretically, but they may not, if you're gonna make us pay this, well, we ain't coming then. You can take your
Right.
jobs and work at McDonald's instead of getting that.
Or we could require a hydrant in a certain area, which is great, they put the hydrant in, they pay the cost of it, but down the road, the maintenance on that hydrant is something that comes out of the district. So it's 101
Well, if it's a
hydrants.
private fire hydrant, they have to pay.
They do? Okay,
Yes.
so it wouldn't be 101 at that point, it would be, okay.
So we require fire hydrants, like the UPS, we require them for fire hydrants. They have to maintain those fire hydrants.
Okay.
They have to
Maintain the
pay the
cost.
water district the fees for
Okay.
having water available to those fire hydrants, I guess is the correct term.
Could they, instead of the hydrant, put in a tank?
They still need fire hydrants. They could put in a cistern to supplement the sprinkler system. If the water there, I believe the sprinkler system they're getting is hydraulically calculated, so they don't need a cistern. But they do need fire hydrants so that we can supplement the fire protection system, you know, fire department connection to supplement their sprinkler system if they were to have a fire there.
So a big tank like a Home Depot or Lowe's would fly?
They could do something like that. We usually let the engineers come up with the best and cheapest solution that will do the job. We generally don't dictate to them that this, you have to meet the NFPA standard, the code. You have to meet the code. How you meet the code, generally is not what we're looking for. We want to make sure we meet the code.
It was a fun class.
All right, so
So I think sending folks to this conference is, I think this is a complete discussion, is important if you want to be successful going forward.
I think it's beneficial, but again, just to reiterate my concern is that, you know, you send me, I may never ever have anything to do with the fire district and the fire building ever again.
but that's not the focus.
The
The
focus
focus
is
is getting an yes vote.
Right,
That's
but somewhere down the road,
We'd like to get a better return on the investment.
we're gonna need a substation somewhere, that's gonna require another committee to get. Derek, who's now lieutenant or deputy chief, when he's still got that knowledge, and hopefully has continued to learn. I can ask questions from my basic knowledge of the construction industry. I haven't been in it for as long as I have. But I think there's going to be a lot of good information there that if we can't avail ourselves of it, it's just who goes.
I could make them go.
So, I'm available, but I just don't like the optics of it. That's my concern, is the optics of how the town will look on it.
I think it would look better if we, honestly.
I mean, I looked at the calendar, it's not there. I just worry about the transparency of the town and all this, because I've upset enough people in this town with a few of the many different roles. So I know my credibility is about 50%. So, and that's part of it.
What if we were able to send another commissioner instead? If one wanted to go.
Should be someone on the
So
committee.
here's what I wonder, and I don't, this is gonna come out wrong, I guarantee you. But it's not what it is.
Then think about it for a second.
So, you said send a
Different commissioner.
different commissioner. So,
I don't know if anyone,
If
Paul's
anyone
probably
goes,
not
they
gonna
should
be
be
around
here.
next time
Right.
when we need a building. And who knows if Eric will be, but when you're doing something, when you're involved in something, everybody has a capacity to understand different things. So, and I don't,
well, that's why you should be sending a few people.
more than one.
Yeah.
Because two people can go to the same seminar and come out with two different
Agree.
points that highlighted to them, this was so important. And then person, well, didn't you think this was important too? Or that I didn't think that was important, but this was important, you know. Having multiple perspectives on the same thing is really ideal when it comes down to it.
There's a wise boss of mine once said, perception is reality. Perspective is as well. Your perception and your perspective are very different from mine.
Could be. So, I mean, I can't think of a reason to just say no one should go. There's nothing to gain from it. Because, yeah, there's something to gain from it.
There is.
Absolutely.
This girl's from, yeah.
And
Here's a thought.
in my perception of cost, $1,800, $2,000, $2,500, in the grand scheme of things, is what? And you know me, I'm the, you know what I mean? So I'll tell you what, if the commissioners would fund it, and I could say right now, I am available to go, I'd go in a heartbeat. But then, do you know what the other side of that question is? Who the hell wants him to go? Right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
There's pros and cons to it. I
I'm a
mean,
gift of gab, so I mean,
say what?
See, John, see, you're concerned.
you are a talker, so it
and I
could
agree
actually
with you. I
benefit.
think that it's beneficial for us, it's another piece of the puzzle that helps us build credibility with the voters. It
Yeah.
says, okay,
I've been looking at
this is,
stuff.
you know, we went to this seminar, and this is what, you know, we were able to bring back.
Mhm.
Maybe Lisa would be interested, with her background as a structural engineer. She'd probably pull a lot of great information out of it.
Because of the weekend, 2 days before Memorial Day, I'm going, but
Was that what,
I got plans.
Yeah.
I leave that
I
Wednesday.
didn't go to camp.
It's
I am not an off-field.
there's a lot of good stuff. I just worry about the optics of the taxpayers, and
Yeah, no, and
that's my reservation with it. It's-
So,
I think it's a legitimate concern.
just, where's the money come from? It's not gonna come out of your operating budget.
No, it would come from the design planning.
Can it come from this?
Is my question.
I would bet $1,000.
We would have to look at how it's written.
That was my first thought, but I don't know.
Right. We have to look at how that warrant article is written to make sure that it meets, because it's design and things like that. And yes, this is part of the design process, but this is also, I would want to really look at that warrant
My
article
understanding is
precisely.
any of the money that we spend is coming out of the account.
Right.
So
That
This
100,000
would be-
minus.
Part of that.
an expense, if you will, of the committee. So that was my first thought, was it comes from there, but then, because my brain spins, oh, can it come from there?
Well, yes, that's why I would like to make sure that we
You gotta
look
make
at the
sure.
warrant article
You gotta make
precisely. But yes, that's where I was assuming that it would probably come from as well.
You
As
can ask
long
the
as we-
lawyer too. I mean,
Just put them on staff, how about that way?
No. I just want to read the warrant article black and white first and have a couple of
You
people
gotta know,
look
you
at
gotta
it.
know where it comes
Right.
So should we as a committee be asking commissioners to consider approving that the committee sends a couple people to this conference?
from. Only if there's a couple people that can go.
Like I said, I can go.
Well, it's kind of a chicken and the egg question. Do we find out if there's anybody that can go and wants to go, and then have to go, sorry, we're not gonna pay for it? We say, yeah, I think it would be better served if we ask the question.
You ask the commissioners if they would be willing to front up to 2 or 3 people, whatever the group here decides. Are you willing to front up to that amount? And then from there, you look for your bodies to fill that.
I think if you two wanted to go, and if Lisa wanted to go, I think the commissioners would support it.
I mean, 2 years ago, I'd have gone and paid for it. We just don't float that way for me right now.
I just think it's a fantastic opportunity.
This would be one of those ideas where if you had, good communication and support, can you get a business to support that expenditure?
I'd rather get their money for other things. When we get into the building phase, I'd rather have their money for that, because I'd be trying to get more than 4,500.
Well, you start small.
And that was, and didn't the police department do that? Didn't they get solicit donations
As far
for?
when they got into it, I think.
Yeah, towards the end of that project, yeah, you could donate for various things.
Yeah, they got a lot of stuff, like a fence or something like that, from Lowe's or something like that. Other things were donated by businesses within the community. I can't remember specifically.
Yeah, fencing, I mean, even some of the stuff we're looking at with this, you might be able to get some of the interior cabinetry and things like that. Anything, absolutely, and that's where you start doing the public resource and reaching out, and maybe agencies like Rotary or Frudenberg or something, they put in part of the exhaust fan for your clean room and things like, absolutely. But yeah, that's the latter part, once you really have a plan going.
Once you get the voters to say yes.
Is it prudent to have that thought and talk to any of these people in tandem for that?
I think it's a little premature for that. I think you really got to have somewhat of a conceptual before you start going out to the public. It's just my thought, from what I've seen from other projects. Is you got to have at least some kind of a conceptual. I mean, it's great that we got this print and this is what we're thinking about, but
You have to have the picture. This is what we want it to look like.
yeah. But then you explain, so what's a clean room entail? A clean room is negative pressure, so you're going to have multiple doors, avenues to the living as well as to the other side. You're going to have the vent system. So that's where, you're going to have some HVAC, plus you're going to have some possible makeup air going into that. So if you're doing floor-sided, all those things. And that's where you start talking to them, where you get, maybe some of these local businesses might donate some of the time for installing some of it. That's how Belmont built their station. Belmont, pretty much, I think it was BPS or CCI that actually built their station, but then they had Dutile refrigerant came in and did the heating for it. they had an electrician who was on the fire department, and he donated his time. Other people and that other, like, they actually built the station themselves at the time and saved a lot of money. And that cinder block building garage with a small dorm area off of it is still standing. It's not the most efficient, but
It costs a lot to heat that building.
it does. Yeah.
Fortune,
Canterbury's even worse.
it is.
Canterbury has a lot of wasted space. I couldn't believe when I went in there. That's an open barn system, and it goes all, it's open air all the way up to the joist at the top. Yeah, so they got big fans in there, and they got the salamander heaters, or whatever those things are. But yeah, so they're heating all that way up there, 2 and 3 stories above the engines. So,
15.5 feet is all we need for a ceiling height in that glass.
what do you, is your thought on it, but to take to the commissioners? I'm just a correspondent, your
I think
courier.
we should.
I think
Okay.
it's a great idea.
What are the details? 1, 2, 3?
The three.
I think we asked for 3,
1 to 3, okay.
knowing that
Okay.
we'll probably only have 2.
That might be able to make it.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just putting down that note so that I have it going.
Okay.
I also have approved Lisa Martin to join the committee, so that I have my notes going for next week.
When is she coming up? April?
She said April, she's available April to December. Once she's approved, we could, if she wants, she can, join us by phone as you did for the last week.
Yes, as long as the majority of your committee members are here in person. Yes.
Did that work okay for you, Kevin? 'Cause
It was awesome.
It was fine.
Yeah.
As long as Stephanie's here to set it up. I don't know if anybody here can set it up.
What were the
Worst-
instructions? Don't touch anything.
Yeah, that was, which worked out perfectly, because none of us did.
She said, walk away.
Yeah, you don't have to hang up, just walk away. Okay. Worst case, you can call them on your cell phone, put it on speaker.
I've done that, but it's nowhere near as effective as that little round disc over there. That was
The ball drum.
every penny. It was only like $340.
As long as it's hooked into the phone line, you can call into it. They're very easy to run.
That was,
We have one at Lakes Region that works really well.
I've used them for the military for years.
so it's a little weird being on the other end, because you want to say something, but you don't want to interrupt or step on
Yes,
anybody.
that's the downside to
So
those.
there's yeah, it worked fine.
Okay, so back to our original mission this evening, which was reviewing the proposals and making a decision as to who we want to interview. Now,
Can that be done in public? Will it impact your contract? Or is this still in the preliminary part of it, of who you want to invite in? Non-public versus public? Is that a consideration for this part of it, or is that latter part? If you're starting to say, we're going to take invites from this person, I just want to make sure.
well, my understanding of non-public is that if it would be detrimental to somebody's reputation.
Contracts also.
Negotiating contracts is part of it.
So I just want to make sure.
But
That's
this-
But
why-
we're not
We're
negotiating.
not in negotiations.
That's why I just want to throw it out there early
So
on.
I'm trying to,
Yeah.
it's not negotiation, it's not legal. But it's not hiring as a public employee,
Right.
it's not that.
But they could
I think-
impact the contract negotiations is one of the categories.
It is, we're not there yet.
And that's what I'm saying, is we may be premature in the process, so it's not impacting, but I just want to make sure
So
we're
wouldn't that
stepping into it.
be, that part would it be the commissioners that do the
Probably.
negotiation on pricing, not this committee?
That wouldn't be, and I don't know that this committee can enter no public session. I don't think we could.
Good question. I don't know, I just
I
want to
don't
make
know
sure
either.
because
That's a
of,
great
I'm
question.
thinking,
Stuff I
I'm
deal with.
thinking no off the top of my head.
you're not an elected body, so I don't know if
Fucking
91A protects you on any of it.
I mean, the meetings are open to the
It's a
public.
subcommittee. Yeah, but
I don't.
This is it's a subcommittee.
I'd want a solid opinion before I
right.
even would attend a non-public in this committee.
That's the reason why I'm just putting it out there as a thought.
Does nobody say any bad things about these contractors, and we'll be all set. Well, here's an easy question that could shorten our meeting intensely. We have 5 proposals. From Hutter Construction, Milestone Engineering Construction, Fulcrum Construction, Bowen Corp., and Bonapage and stuff.
Which one am I missing then? No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know.
It's just me.
Do we want to interview all 5 of them?
Why not? What do you got to lose?
I think 5 is not too high of a number of spinning wheels.
I think that's about as many as you want to.
I think it would get around the cap, but I don't think it's in.
My question is because we have 2 proposals that they spent a lot of time on. One from Bonapage and Stone and one from Hutter. The other 3 don't pale in comparison. These are just their,
This is their promo.
right. Their presentation when they come for an interview, I would assume would be much different. And let's not forget that these proposals were put together based on a telephone conversation with a member of this committee and somebody at this contract.
Yep.
So somebody on the other end of the phone may have heard things differently.
Yep, absolutely. I think going with all 5 is fair. I don't think it's too much. It might take 2, it might be 2 or 3 nights to get through them all. With the standardized question bank that you do for every single one of them. I would assume that part of it is you'd let them come in and kind of explain their background themselves, and then you would go into some questions from there. That question bank would be uniform for all of them, but their presentation or selling point up front would be their subjective portion. Each one gets to their one.
I find when you do that though, there are always follow-up questions based on their presentation that you're going to ask of specific candidates that you may not ask of others. Just, I'm not saying that's good or bad.
No,
It just happens.
I think you're exactly right, Chief, because they're gonna spawn some idea in your head or my head or Tim's head that says, hey, what about this? That, the other guy didn't mention.
Right.
But I think having that baseline of 5, 10, 15, 50, whatever, however many questions we come up with, to ask each one of them so that there is we have a base to start from
Standardization.
that we can evaluate them on. And somebody may come in and just wow you with their subjective presentation and their sales pitch of why we should pick them, but they may not be able to answer the questions that we have.
Yeah.
My preference would be no more than 3,
Okay.
although I will tell you, I don't know how to get to 3 from the 5 we got, because any one of those would go with them. So I don't know how to get to the 3, and absent knowing that, it only makes sense to do
Right.
5.
It's a lot.
Where do the questions come from, and what are, because if we're gonna ask this guy ABC, we gotta ask the rest of them ABC as well.
Correct.
It's got to be the same questions. The only thing that should differ is their answers. If there's any difference, the only difference should be their answers.
Yeah.
But I agree with what the chief said. Some of these, we're gonna have that basis of 10 questions that we're gonna ask every single one of them. But as they're going through their presentation, assuming that we're gonna be taking notes, and somebody's gonna say, well, what about this? That, Fulcrum may come in and do a great presentation, and we have 2 questions that, based upon what information they give us. But then BPS may come in and Keith ends up 20 questions that you can't foresee, and we can't limit, we can't say, well, we only have these, we're only gonna ask these 10 questions.
It may have to be a two-part process, almost like a, and then you get down to one or two. Because unfortunately, when that first one comes in, they may say something, or it's like, ooh, now I want to really ask that of 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's not a fair interview of them that, oh, that, well, we know that, so that's part of why having that standardized to give that fair assessment across the board, kind of like the scorecard, saying fair. And people write down, oh, well, this stood out as a note, this stood out as a note, and you write down that note afterwards when you discuss it. Okay, so we got that, is who can it be ruled down to? You may not go with, okay, this is the definitive one tonight, and really it's kind of down to these two. And that's where that secondary, all those questions came into it for that follow-up, and you can reach out to them.
So you kind of look at it, you're trying to hire somebody, that's what we're trying to do. And I know and this would be a very important position, I know, for instance, when I was applying for a fire chief, I'll just use here, for example, never mind the other places I applied for, it's not just one interview. It was 3 interviews before they selected me to be finalist. We don't have, the first interview doesn't have, we might be able to narrow it down after we go through the list of people here, to maybe down to 3 or something like that, and then have another interview and then narrow that down. I know that takes time to do that, but ultimately we're looking for the best person or company to do this.
Yeah, now I think we're at the point where making these decisions are gonna affect the end product. And certainly I don't want us to be wasting time, but at the same point, I don't want us to rush through the process just to get it done. So the idea of having first round interviewing all 5 of the contractors that responded to the proposal, and then narrowing it down to some pre-approved or pre-decided number of, was it 2 or 3, and then ask them to come back in. And that's going to show their level of interest as well.
And if they go in, scope out the site and things like that, and get some generic renderings, and I mean, they have generic renderings here, but tailored to what their possible conceptual down there would be.
And that could be something that we ask them to do. You know, if you're chosen as the finalist, next time we see you, bring something back with us that show us a picture of what you think would fit there on that parcel of land. How does the only one that has a picture of our current garage?
It's online too.
Right.
It is,
But
but
that's what they did, they
Oh,
pulled
sure
it
they
from
did, but-
Google Maps online when you tapped it.
this one I think is a picture. This is Wells, Maine. Really, guys? Yeah, Town of Wells, 3 public safety facilities.
Well, BPS has a picture of the flagpole. But the,
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Are we gonna contact these people? Which do what way, when, where, and how of that?
Yeah.
And are we gonna meet, can you meet on Wednesday night? Is it gonna be still every 2 weeks, these people? I mean, I assume we're expecting them to come to us.
Yeah.
My expectation is that we would schedule the interviews on Wednesday evening, one of our regularly scheduled meetings. And I say that because my expectation is that as we go through this process, that a representative from whoever we hire is going to become part of the committee, or will be
in fairly regular attendance
Regular contact, yes.
with the committee, at the committee meetings. I mean, this time, every other Tuesday or every other Wednesday is where we're gonna be working on what that building's gonna look like and how it's gonna be built. So their commitment has to be that somebody's gonna be here.
If they want the job, they'll be here when we keep asking them.
You just want buy-in from that representative rather than, I have to be there because they told me to. You kind of want your, we learned a lot from REI briefing of what you kind of looking for, and that's kind of what we need someone who's going to have that little bit of buy-in as well and present.
I know from my personal experience, having worked for Hutter 17 years ago, that superintendents or project managers, when they were working on municipal projects or state projects, I remember, because I was in charge of personnel and safety, project managers or superintendents would attend meetings with that municipality on a regular basis, giving them updates of where they were at, or I never went to all of them, but it's not out of the ordinary for that to be part of the process. And that could be one of the questions that we ask.
So before we bring these people in,
We should have questions.
we need to have
started.
with a line of questions. Who does that? When's it get done?
Did anybody bring questions with them tonight?
For these people?
Yeah.
But the question that keeps hitting me in the head is, have you done something that we can use?
What are the right questions to ask? That's the more important question.
Can you get cheat sheets from your previous meetings or the previous seminars you went to?
On what?
You may have some cheat sheets that,
I pretty much, on the last time I went, I put everything on that website that I can't get into right now, because I shut off some stuff. And I don't even know how.
I'm sure Kevin could figure it out for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do something electronically, let me help.
because your other choice besides that as one resource is reaching out to the police station committee members and seeing if one of them could
Did they
come in.
ask the question? Did
Did
they
they
do
have-
this
Do
process?
they have a bank of questions for the process as well? So
It's a good idea.
that way you're skipped. That's how I got into the military. No offense, I don't build my training plans. I take someone else's and then I manipulate
Steal
to what I need to use, and so I change it to what I need to, but I don't start the wheel from the smoke.
You don't need
I
to-
start the wheel from, okay, I got this and now I gotta shave it down.
You don't need to reinvent
Adapt and
anything,
overcome, right?
Yeah,
because it's all been done before.
right. So those are two resources to reach out to where locally that,
And how was Bonaparte and Stone chosen for the last person?
So when we hired Kyle Barker, he did the selection, set up the process where we interviewed all the different, put out an RFP, and then there were all these replies. I don't know if I can find all that stuff. And then we went through a grading process and an interview process, and ended up with being Bonaparte Stone. Was chosen because of their experience in the area, but more importantly, the way they costed the project. I don't know if they were the cheapest. I think they were the second cheapest, but the way they were doing it fit the district best at the time.
But I think, do you have some of that grading process?
I'll have to look, I don't-
That would be a great resource too.
that's another source.
I'll see what I can find in that. I don't know.
If it's not accessible digitally, if you're locked out, you just ask Kevin. He'll have
So
you.
that was in the previous building committee
Yep.
stuff. I think this, we used Bonapage and Stone we used them for the Tilton School and Manville Road.
Of course, that's really going way back.
Yeah, so that process was back in 2015, 16, something.
That would be a good resource too.
Mhm.
Full resource. Well, is 2 weeks, so our next meeting would be 2 weeks from today. I just had it
Next meeting will be March 9th.
March 9th. Is that a reasonable amount of time for us to come up with that list of questions? And then present the then contact these 5 contractors and let them know that we want to start doing interviews on it would be on the 23rd of March. Would be our first opportunity to grasp.
So the potential questions, if they're coming from another source,
They need to be kind of here on the
We'll
9th.
have to massage and
we don't need.
finalize those next meeting.
Maybe,
You might want to take a little longer than that.
because it's gonna take a certain amount of time to find out who's got them and if they'll share them. And if they're relevant. Right? And then from that, you would finesse them to, I don't know. So, I don't know, does that happen in 14 days? I can't.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would, honestly,
I
but
don't think so.
I don't know that. It could be that someone knows right away, hey, they're right in this file, there you go, and we've got them all Friday. It could also be 2 weeks from Friday, by the time we don't know. So, who's gonna find out where they are and if they'll share them?
And I can look and see if I can get them from the previous process, see if we have them somewhere.
And your seminar notes, if you can.
I have my seminar notes, I think, in a separate file on the computer. And then I think I shared them to that shared thing that I can't get into anymore.
I know one.
So I'll find them and I can resend them all out. I know I can get the notes from the previous things, the previous seminar. I have a lot of that stuff.
I'll reach out to 1 or 2 people from the Tilton community, police station community. Kevin Drew and Kevin LaChapelle both would probably have some input.
Wasn't Eric on that committee too?
I can't talk to him too easily. Commissioners, because then it's a quorum. That's the
I
reason why.
think, no, a quorum is if you're.
You're not making a decision
You're not making a
relative to.
decision, you're just asking for information.
This
Okay.
is,
I
this is,
just,
yeah, no, that's fine. You're
Okay.
not making a decision. See,
You're not voting on anything.
you're not, yeah, you're not, the truth of the matter is, you can go out to dinner with them, you can go fishing with them. You just got to have
stay off the
the
topic.
trust that, we're not talking about engine 2 and what we're gonna do and
Right,
how we're gonna
okay.
do it. and
That's fine,
personnel
that's-
problems, and then
I
decide
try to
something,
stay
and then carry that
as,
decision into a meeting.
Right.
That's where you've gone wrong.
I try to stay very transparent any way
And
I
you've got
can.
to, because
Small town, people, they talk, assume.
you have all the answers without any information.
They saw it on Facebook. It's gotta be real.
Alright, so I got 3 people I'll reach out on that.
Okay.
That's all, I'll work on that before the 9th.
Great. And if we have nothing by the 9th, then there's no point in meeting. Hopefully we do.
So if you're meeting on the 9th to discuss stuff, the 23rd would be the earliest potentially of that, of meeting with someone, which isn't likely.
No.
Well, are we glued to every other, I mean, if we couldn't meet on the 9th,
You can push it back to the 16th if you wanted to, or something like that.
a
yes.
week rather than 2?
It is, but just availability.
Yep.
John's probably got the most stuff on his schedule.
Chief, is the fire district meeting the 14th?
Yes.
You got a book. Still writing stuff down.
He's still tactile.
I like to see the whole month
So,
on the page.
just so you're aware, Derek sent me an email saying he couldn't attend tonight, he had babysitting issues.
So, yeah, the upcoming meetings are the 9th, the 23rd, and then if you're staying on cycle with that, April would be the 6th and the 20th. And then you get into May 4th. So theoretically,
Well, technically April would be the 13th and the 27th. Second.
oh, did we say the 2nd?
Second and fourth.
I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. I don't have my calendar going out that far, so.
I only know that because the first Wednesday I'm not meeting.
So on the 13th, I'll be flying back from south. On the 27th, I will be back down that way. So,
So potentially we're into March 9th.
yes,
Yes.
that's the next one.
So, then I would ask Chief and John, whatever information you come up with,
Get it out to everyone.
if you can send it out to the entire committee, I think that would be helpful. And then hopefully we can continue along with the process and stay on track and have some questions decided at our meeting on the 9th.
I will reach out to people. Monday, most likely is when I'll be available.
Any other business that we need to conduct?
Nope, I've got taken to the commissioners, 1 to 3 committee members, cost about $1,500 per person for the seminar. Approve Lisa Martin. For myself, as I do outreach out to Tilton Police Interview Committee, Kevin Drew, Kevin LaChapelle, Eric Pyra before March 9th. Chief, previous seminar notes, chief, previous Tilton School and Manville Road interviews if possible. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that might be hard because if Kyle Barber did the interview process, they may have that material. We may not have it here, but we can always try and see.
Do you recall, Chief, if he did it, or was the committee involved with it?
So he devised the process and did the RFP, and then we got all the material back and went through a grading process.
So if he did it, we own it, right? He was
If we
paid,
have it.
he was paid to do it.
Yeah, he
So
paid
he was
to do it.
paid to supply a packet. So if he supplied the packet,
We got it.
Doesn't matter if we
I gave it to
find
you.
it.
So if
Right.
you lost the packet, I
Oh, I
don't,
see where you're
I
going.
don't owe you another packet. I
No,
gave
no,
you
that's
a
not,
product.
that's not where I was going at all.
Right.
I don't mean we
Right.
can, no, that's not, no.
So if they can find the product, then yes, we have the product,
Yeah.
but if not, you can't really go back and say, hey, I want another copy. It's like, yeah, and I want more money.
And that could be, yeah, no, I get it, yeah, I didn't,
And that's even if he had it anymore.
I was with a different company.
Right,
Yeah, so maybe Warren Street
Maybe Warren
have
Street.
it.
right. But once again, they may want more money to produce it, where they're not making money off of the current.
Did the prior committee actually interview the contractor, or did they just go through the grading process based upon the written proposal?
I believe we just went through the grading process based on the written proposals.
All right, well, seeing no other business, call the meeting. At 6:35, according to the clock on the wall.